Are we seeing another alt season? While Bitcoin is doing nothing? Institutions are buying Bitcoin in the thousands, while the spot ETFs are generating billions of dollars in volume in just 3 days. And if that's not enough, Hong Kong is likely to approve a Bitcoin spot ETF as well very, very soon. All of this and much more in this episode of Phil Prince, your one and only stop for crypto, finance and trading. Subscribe down below, hit the bell icon, give me a like, let's get to it. While Bitcoin is becoming pretty boring over the last days, after the Bitcoin spot ETF has hit the markets, altcoins are getting back on track. As we can see here, for the last 7 days, we had a couple of altcoins having serious gains like Sui, like Tau, Pulsex, Sai, Beam and Blur, with Sui being one of my favorite altcoins at the moment, now sitting at approximately $1.30. I actually began accumulating Sui as it was around 45 cents and was looking at $1 and $1.20 as its first price targets, which is now acting as a support it seems. So let's see where Sui might take us. I'm actually looking into accumulating more Sui at bigger dips, but this ultimately depends on Bitcoin's behavior. So we will look into Bitcoin dominance and some other metrics. But before we get into this, let's have a look at some important recent news first. The first really interesting thing is now that we have our spot Bitcoin ETFs, 10 of these 11 already put over 34,000 Bitcoins combined. This is excluding GBTC, which is the ticker for the Bitcoin spot ETF by Grayscale, which is a special case as Grayscale has been a fund that was active for like 10 years and already bought thousands of Bitcoin beforehand, which got converted into these new kind of ETF. So these are not new funds and therefore they got excluded. But 34,000 Bitcoins for like 3 days is already ridiculous. But what's even more crazy is if we look at the trading volume these 11 Bitcoin ETFs generated in their first 3 days, we're looking at $10 billion. And in comparison to all of the 500 ETFs that launched in the year 2023, they had a combined $450 million in volume. So to make it really clear, we have 11 specialized Bitcoin ETFs that are doing 20 times the volume of 500 all kind of purpose ETFs did in a whole year. If that's not extremely bullish news, I really don't know what is. Of course, this takes time to reflect in the price of Bitcoin, so please don't wonder why Bitcoin isn't 10x as of yesterday. This is actually something I talked about in my last video, so please make sure to watch this as well, as I explained all you need to know about Bitcoin ETFs, how they came into existence, why we need them, and what they might do to the markets. Furthermore, I talked about a very special event in financial history that is actually pretty comparable to what we have now and could give us hints where Bitcoin might head. Back to the most recent news, it seems that Hong Kong is likely to approve a spot Bitcoin ETF as well in the very short term. So there's likely even more wealth from other parts of the world flowing into Bitcoin very soon. On top of that, ProShares is filing for another 5 Bitcoin ETFs with indirect exposure, meaning that they will enable investors to short Bitcoin using these ETFs and as well using some kind of leverage. As it's usual for these kind of leverage ETFs, they will offer a leverage factor that is fixed. So 1, 1.5 and 2, negative for shorting and positive for longing the markets. And apart from all of these numbers and news, we now have Blackrock CEO officially saying Bitcoin is digital gold. For the Bitcoin community, of course, this is nothing new. The thing with somebody like him saying that is that it kind of reveals the long-term plans on Bitcoin that BlackRock has with their Bitcoin ETFs. Another very positive mention from the institutional side came from the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, which is a institutional asset and trading organization. And in an interview, he said, when the halving comes, Bitcoin will rally. So we really kind of see an overlap of what the Bitcoin community is normally saying and what institutions are now adopting. All right, so now let's get back to the question if we can expect an alt season. And for this, I'd like to first look at Bitcoin dominance. I already marked some resistance and support levels that have shown to be really important. And the first thing we can see is that this green support and resistance box is now being tested from the downside. What's really interesting in context is that this diagonal red trend line has held for way over a year and has never been broken until end of last year. And now for the first time, we're actually retesting it from the downside. And combined with this green support and resistance box, this suggests further downside for the moment. Obviously, without context, this doesn't mean anything, as the Bitcoin dominance only shows if Bitcoin or the altcoins are leading the market. So let me show you which scenarios are possible. If in fact the Bitcoin dominance is starting to decrease further and Bitcoin is staying stable like it is at the moment, we can expect alts to increase further, as they are doing already for the last week, as I shown in the beginning of the video. If paired with the Bitcoin dominance decrease, Bitcoin is starting to decrease as well, this is not too bad, as alts are likely to stay stable. But now comes the interesting part. If Bitcoin dominance decreases and Bitcoin starts to increase further out of this consolidation zone, then we get our alt season. Something that really adds to this perspective is the altcoin season index. It's currently sitting at 76, and altcoin season, according to this index, is starting above the 75 level. What this basically means is that 75% of the top 50 coins performed better than Bitcoin over the last 90 days. So if we manage to stay above this line for some time, this is when we get the real alt season. The season where you can buy basically anything. It doesn't matter which coin you buy, altcoins, new coins, meme coins, garbage coins, everything will pump. Basically, it's buy high, sell higher season. But beware, nothing is set in stone yet. There is an alternate scenario, as always. So we broke down from this red diagonal trend line, but we're also consolidating in this green support and resistance box. And if price manages to stay there and even bounces from here, then things start to look quite different. So if the scenario plays out, it unfortunately wouldn't be too good for altcoins. If we look at the possibilities again, this would mean the increasing Bitcoin dominance with a stable Bitcoin, which is the case right now, would mean stable altcoins. But as soon as Bitcoin is starting to decrease, we're unfortunately looking at a heinous dump in altcoins. And even if Bitcoin is starting to increase then, which is quite nice, also alts will decrease. So the question now becomes, how likely is it that Bitcoin decreases now? Well, on the weekly chart, unfortunately, things are not looking too good. If we look at this weekly close right here, we got a big wick. So price got rejected at this support and resistance zone. Zooming in on the 4-hour chart brings a bit more confluence when bringing up the 200 EMA. And there we can see that we are trading below it for the first time in around 90 to 100 days. This is something I mentioned in my last video as well. Go watch it if you haven't already. And this was right here. And still it seems that we couldn't reclaim it. So the last hope for bulls is that we are having higher lows for the time being. If this changes, we are looking for further downside. In this bearish scenario, it's also possible that we go up first, take out some of the shorts, and then write it down. If in this case, we will be able to hold there and consolidate, we could look for further upside. Looking back at the weekly chart, the bearish scenario could take us down to this diagonal trend line, as well as this horizontal support and resistance zone, which proved to be important for quite some time. And this would bring us to around $30,000, and before that to maybe this support resistance zone, which is around $38,000. This is something we have to wait and see. Also, if we bring up the Fibonacci tool, we can see that these two support and resistance lines coincide with the 0.236 and 0.382 Fibonacci levels. These two levels are often referred to as strong bounce zones in strong trends for continuation. So for a bull market thesis, this and next year, these are optimal levels to hold in case of a further strong continuation. Now, when looking at the scenario we talked about earlier, if Bitcoin in fact does dump right here, alts will even dump harder. And this would mean this could be around, let's measure this really quick, around a 20% dump. And if Bitcoin dumps 20%, this means alts can easily dump 50 and 60%. We just have to keep this in mind. But this is nothing to worry about if you're holding long term, as this means that you can scoop up cheap Bitcoins and altcoins. If you're trading like me, this is even better, as you can short this on further confluence and then use your profits to buy up more coins. In this case, we could see something similar to January 2022, as we peaked right above the altcoin season level and then dipped right under. Another confluence are the Bitcoin CME future gaps, as they tend, but don't have to, be filled. If we look back in time, we can see that all of these gaps got filled. I will mark them for you right here. And now we have another gap right here that is yet to be filled and indicates some downside first. As you can see from my approach, it doesn't matter if you're trading or investing. You have to have a plan, because markets tend to do what you don't expect. So if you lay out all of the scenarios that could happen and find confluence on these scenarios, you might see what is more likely and what is not. Or in other words, if you fail to plan, your plan is to fail. Because the worst thing that can happen to you is you just have one scenario, then it doesn't play out, you get excited, you get emotional, and then you start to make bad decisions, and in the end, it could cost you all your money. But that's a thing of the past, as you're now here with me, Phil Prince, on my channel, and in my videos, you will learn everything you need to crush and navigate the markets. If you stay to the very end of my video, please make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and give me a like. Also make sure to watch my very first video, which you can see right here. There I explain everything you need to know about the Bitcoin ETFs and what this might hold for Bitcoin in the future. But until next time, please take care and goodbye.